Ignition liftoff. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have liftoff.
Today's guest is a pioneer in every sense of the word, from being born in Kenya and growing up in London to becoming the first female publisher of British GQ and later the chief business officer of British Vogue. A champion for innovation, she's redefining what leadership looks like. I'm so excited for this one. Please welcome to the podcast, Vanessa Kingori, OBE. Just a quick one before we start. If you like listening to this episode, which I know you're going to, please like it and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to share it to your group chat. This is so nice. I'm like, how am I spending my afternoon today? I'm spending it with Vanessa. Yay. And do you know what? It's so funny because we know each other.
Yeah.
We get to meet up from time to time, but life and work gets
down like
in the
this.
way,
No,
doesn't
it's
it? We never
amazing.
get to do this. I've got so much that I want to talk about. I'm really enjoying this kind of new age that everybody that sits a little bit behind the scenes, we're getting that moment to find out a little bit more about the people that are running operations and holding down the fort.
Yeah.
It's so nice to sort of not focus as much as the ones that are all a little bit shiny and actually say, okay, let's actually look at how this is working. So we're going to start way back.
Okay.
You were born in Kenya, grew up in London. I want to know the Vanessa way before the kind of big job roles and the accolades and the OBEs. How do you think your upbringing has sort of played a part in the you that we know today?
Wow. It's been absolutely pivotal, of course. You know, first of all, I want to say I'm so happy to be here. When you first called me, I was like, this is a genius idea. And I just always feel like anything you're doing, I want to back, because I just love the fact that you have this broad audience. And so messages and ideas can reach in a way that doesn't feel too forced. It feels very friendly.
Oh, I love
you
that.
always feel like someone I want to hug.
Oh, that is so kind. Back at you.
So it's nice to be here. But I mean, I think, you know, any psychologist will tell you what happens in those early years is formative. And I had a really interesting upbringing because, like you said, I was born in Kenya. My father's Kenyan. I am Kenyan, but I also grew up in the West Indies. So my mum is from St. Kitts and Nevis. I spent from 5 to 7 living there. And then I came to London at 7.
Gosh, so that's a big old jump,
It's
isn't
a lot
it?
going on,
Yeah.
honestly. And none of it felt jarring, or certainly not in my memory. I just remember belonging to lots of different places, being really observant. And I tell this story often because I think it's so interesting what we think we perceive and what's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't speak until I was nearly 3. And so, you know, my parents, my grandmother were a bit worried. Did I have some developmental sort of speech issue or something? And I didn't have a first word. I had a first sentence. So, and it was about clothes.
I mean, shock.
I remember that my mum said it was to my grandmother, who nearly fainted. And you can imagine, I've not said a peep. They're quite worried. They're like, she seems bright and alert, but and it was that I didn't want to wear that particular dress to Sunday school.
Vanessa, why is this so brilliant? I love
I've got opinions. I've been holding back, but I think
that was when we knew.
I think the main thing for me that I take away from that, apart from I'm opinionated on clothes, is I just was super observant. And so I didn't feel I had anything to say before then. And I was taking the world in. And I think when you experience lots of different spaces, accents, languages, cultures, it's quite normal to have delayed speech. But what I think is really that sort of belies is what happens to your observational skills when you're taking in different cultures. And I think the way that shaped me is I feel very adaptable to change, not infallible, right? Everyone finds change hard, but going through that at a young age, you just get to it will all work out. You just have to kind of, find out your footing. I think I had a lot of myths busted early without even knowing about it. things like women's roles, when you look at it across 3 or more cultures, some of the things that we hear commonly aren't your experience.
Yeah.
When we think about things like race and ethnicity and things like that, when you move to kind of Western country, doesn't normally, some of the narratives don't reflect what you've experienced in Africa. So I think that I was incredibly lucky to have had this kind of adventurous, changeable background where I got to observe lots of different ways of living.
It's so fortunate. You know, when you think and when you look at it that way,
Yeah.
the life that you've experienced before 7, you know, is so brilliant. When we think of kind of you and your roles, this really interests me because, like you say, that you were the one that was really observant and you were kind of taking it all in before you decided that you're going to be like, okay, I'm here.
Come out.
Yeah, hey, in my dress. When I think of you, I think leadership, right? Have you always been that person?
No. The other thing was, which is a component of the not speaking until late thing, is I was actually deemed as quite shy. So even after I started to speak, my big sister used to answer for me.
Classic.
So people would say, "What's your name?" And she'd say her name's Vanessa, or Tony, as it was then. I was called Tony growing up. It's a long story. We don't have time.
Oh, we got time.
Yeah,
We've always got time. I've got my tea.
It's true. We've got tea. We've got a comfy chair. So I think the observation thread continues. And I really think a big part of leadership is not always the talking and the doing, but it's the observing. It's the seeing what other people don't see. It's the seeing the gaps. It's the seeing the opportunities. So what was deemed as shy was just I didn't talk a lot. It was still looking and observing and learning a lot. I'm not a leader in every facet of my life. Do you know what I mean? When I get home, I've got decision fatigue. I want someone else to decide what we're eating. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I think that...
But I think the for want of a better word, the balance of that is so important because you can't
do it in all the
day. You
facets.
just cannot.
And also I don't want to. No, I really
you
enjoy...
want soft girl life.
Some part of my life should be soft.
Yes.
I just think that we can be more than one thing. And I think that it's really important, you know, there's a lot of discussion right now about personal brand. And I think what some people misinterpret that to mean is that in every part of your life or your career that you have to be the boss. Like I had to be schooled first. I had to work for people who I'd go almost create like a patchwork quilt of like, gosh, I love how they handled this, or I would handle this in this way, or so I think everything's seasonal, and also that even in any given moment or season, you can be soft girl or you can be the leader for sure.
Was there a moment in your workplace that you thought, actually, yes, I'm the observer, yes, I'm the girl that sits back a little whilst I'm taking it all in, but I actually know that I should lead? Was there a moment that gave you that confidence to do so?
You know, I'm struggling to think of one standout moment. There's probably been a series of those.
Yeah. Or like a time in your life where you thought, now I can step into this.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think, I talk about this a lot, which is when I was at Conde Nast, and it's really interesting. A lot of my career has been defined by the wider economic situation. So I started at Conde Nast, which was, you know, the glossiest of all of the spaces to work. And I worked at Hearst before that and at newspapers before that. And we had this idea at Conde Nast that people just sat around and things sort of wafted gently into their laps. And, you know, everything was armies of assistants and money flying in. And I was just like, wow, you know, never could be me kind of thing. Found myself there by a slightly odd circumstance, actually. But it was just after the recession had hit. So 2009, I think it was. And so suddenly I'd gotten to this place, this kind of mecca of publishing and luxury. And suddenly they had to hustle.
Because the landscape had changed
Landscape had changed. I remember there was this huge thing at the time that the company was sending around these, like were kind of austerity measures. And it was that, the flower budget had been cut and you couldn't buy yourself fresh cut flowers every week. And I was like, what is going on,
Gosh.
And so...
what are we going to do? The flower budget's gone, guys.
Full on crisis, right? And I was like, my God, I've got this here. Because when you come from a space that isn't the number one space, you build a kind of muscle. The challenger muscle is so important. And I'm really grateful that I didn't go to any number one space first. I had to go, newspapers were challenged when I worked at them. They were just, the digital era was meaning that people were not buying newspapers as much when I was at the Evening Standard. It was still a big deal. They're like, this digital thing's really creeping up on us.
It's a thing,
right?
guys.
It's a thing.
We should embrace it.
Yeah. The interweb's happening. And so there is, when you have an outsider's view in a moment that is challenging, it's a really good leadership opportunity. But I think what is discombobulating for a lot of people is when you feel like the outsider, you feel like you don't have the language and the tools, and there's some unspoken language that you're not a part of, and so you couldn't possibly add anything. But actually, that's precisely the moment where someone who isn't a traditional leader, who isn't from that space, can say, "Hey, guess how we did it here?" Or "I've got some ideas."
Or have you not thought about doing it this way?
So the groupthink thing. So it was, with the Conde moment, it was oh God, you mean I'm not going to be able to order fresh cut flowers every single...
That, by the way, is brilliant.
But also, hey, listen, I've got this, and this idea. And it meant my route to becoming what was then the sort of holy grail, becoming a publisher. I started as like in the fashion team, in the business side, and I got to the publisher role really fast, and people were kind of a bit stunned by it, but it was just because I could see opportunities and name things and name solutions in a way that the very tenured people there, they just didn't have that view.
You had that fresh set of eyes.
Yeah, so there were moments like
what
that.
did your role look like? Because when you and I first met, it was at Conde Nast and you were at British Vogue.
Yeah.
So what did your role there look like? I don't even think we're mates, and I don't think I actually know this.
No one knows. My mum's still like, you hear my family describe my role, and I'm like, nope.
She's important. I know she's important.
Just fill in the blanks.
When do you actually sit down with a mate and say, so what do you actually do all day, every day?
I saw this amazing thing that it's like, someone's a good friend when they have no idea what your job is.
Tell me, what did you do? You're not even there now, but what did you do when you were there?
So my job, I was there for 15 years, which is, I really feel like I sort of grew up there.
Yeah.
And I started off in the fashion sales team.
Right.
So that's partnerships with the on GQ, and graduated to publisher of GQ Style, publisher of GQ, publishing director of Vogue, and then chief business officer across those 15 years. Which is exactly the right kind of pace for me. There was quite unusual because I started and people who had been in a role for 20 years, and I left and some people were still in a similar kind of role, right? So one woman in particular had been 36 years in the same job, right? So me being that person that I've described, it's like, why aren't we doing that? And that should be, it led to the shifts, right?
So you enter a workspace, somebody's been there for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
Is it quite hard to break through and cut through and say, no, we should be doing it like this? How many times did the door sort of get shut in your face a little bit?
Do you know, often, because what I find is there's this disparity between visionary leaders who bring in someone who might look really different because they're thinking, tides are turning, need a few different viewpoints, that person's really good. And the people who are day-to-day running the ship, who have, particularly in times of upheaval, so much to lose. So I find that if I've ever experienced resistance, it's not been at the very top. Those guys are like, yep, I'm secure in where I am, and I can make big, bold decisions, and I'm exercised in doing that. And this, I'm going to let this person run. It's rarely at the people who are on the floor doing the things, right? They're like, I don't know, it sounds good to me, I'll go with it. It's usually at the people who have relative success in the middle, because they have more to play for and more to lose.
Yes.
And so anyone coming in and slightly disrupting what they believe is the world order is really scary. And I think that I found that hard. I continue to find that hard, to be honest, because it's not how I'm wired. But I have to continue to remind myself that, you know, I don't represent how most people think. None of us do. We all have our... And so it was definitely really, really hard in those early days where I just sounded different. I looked different. You know, the guy I replaced was like a Sandhurst.
Well, you said that, the guy you replaced.
Yes.
So there's
and it was
whole
always
shift.
a guy. I've never actually, I just realized this recently. I have never had a female predecessor. In every single one of my roles, I've been the first woman. And in those days in particular, you know, the man I replaced on GQ was an ex-military, sort of Sandhurst military. Funnily enough, I just replaced a military man as well. But he was like old school, and he ran the team in a particular way, and he dressed in and he looked and sounded like authority. You looked at him and you thought, right, stand up straight. And my approach is really different. I'm much more like, okay, let's have a chat about it. I'm going to be a bit more casual. I was the youngest publisher at the time as well. Wow. So it would have been performative to be anything. Do you know what I mean? If I tried to come in with like
going like Sergeant Major. All of a sudden, what's
happening, right? And what I realized is everyone talked lots about me being the first woman in that role and the first person of color. But actually, the things that really made it so that I had to work hard were being a young woman. Age really played a big part in that, and class. And particularly at Conde, and this is a really strange thing. When I speak to Americans, for example, they're like, don't get it. If you can do that, you know what I mean? But it's a very particular
but it's very
thing
class
here.
Focused here.
Yes.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I remember spending a lot of time in the girl band in LA. We lived there for a bit.
Yeah.
And they, you know, I was trying to explain to friends that I made stateside. They'd be like, so do you know the Queen? And I'm like, no, I'm literally from like Essex. Like, I grew up in a council flat. Like, they don't understand that, yeah, that's right, but you're from England or you're from Europe.
Yeah.
They don't understand how segregated
it's crazy.
it is here.
And it's certain institutions where you feel it really sharply because what's funny now is people struggle to believe that I'm from a working class background, but I'm like definitive, you know, was raised by a single parent. She was an NHS nurse, you know, we went to state schools and all of the rest of it. But in certain organisations where Conde Nast, you know, it was called Totty Towers when I started. And it's like, it's like when you try to explain to America, what is Totty? You're like, don't worry about it. But, you know, everyone was one degree of separation. Everyone sort of talked about, you know, in the interviews and things, it was like, where do you holiday and where do you school? Where do you summer? Horses and all of the rest of it. And I was thinking, all right, you know, I can't, I've got nothing to add here, but I'm really good at my job, you know. And I think that it's so interesting how we're socialized to see leadership. And so it wasn't, I think, that anyone was being particularly prejudiced, right, for the markers that everyone could see. It was more that I just didn't feel like what authority feels like. And if you think about it, it's kind of, what is it, less than 1% of British leadership went to state school. So we're just not used to seeing someone like me running the show, right? And it really tugs on people's bias, and not for the reasons that are most talked about and like all of the woke stuff. It's just psychologically, we've been conditioned to think of leaders as looking and feeling like X in certain spaces, and getting people to trust you and get on board. And also, if part of your brand is that, hey, I mess up sometimes, I don't always get it right, I don't have all the answers, this isn't going to be top down, that can be discombobulating for people because they're like, hang on, aren't you supposed to have all the answers? No, it's all bullshit.
Yes,
No one has all the
I
answers.
know, and guess what? The guy that was here before me did not have all the answers. He just
bluffed you
appeared.
hard.
Yeah, exactly
Yeah,
that.
of course, yeah.
It's so funny because in like a working space, and me and my team say this a lot, I would much rather somebody say, "Hi, I've sort of dropped the ball here. This is missed, or this hasn't, but I'm working on it and I'm across it," rather than sort of changing the narrative. And it's like, "Oh no, but I thought that you said that no, honesty, be
Yeah.
real." But I do think the world is leaning a lot more
Yes.
towards that now. Like you say, when you were there for 15 years, I can imagine at the start,
Yeah.
that's how it looks.
Yeah, it's true. It's definitely shifting. I think in certain spaces more than others. And I think that things are a little bit like a pendulum, you know? You see a bit of progress, then it swings back, then you need to push back again. But I definitely think that more honest, collaborative style of leadership is much more fit for the times.
Yeah.
Because things are changing so fast. There isn't actually a lot of space or time for anyone to be perfect at everything. Because as soon as you get good at something, it's moved on. Like,
So true.
technological innovation means that we can't accumulate all of the knowledge and then rise slowly to the top of an organization and say, I know everything you need to know. So actually, you're better to have a collection of experts and a guiding voice or two that kind of help you move forward, and who are happy to say, hey, I fumbled that, but so-and-so's great at that. Let's bring them in and let's see if they can add value.
When I think of you, and I mean, your first, well, not your first words, your first sentence said it itself. When I think of you, I think of fashion, right?
I feel like I'm dropping the ball today.
No. Yeah, never. Your first sentence proved that. For me, you being top of your game at British Vogue seems like the pinnacle. Like, this is the job for you. This is the perfect fit. Can it get any bigger than this? And I think we'll touch on this now. Now you're at Google and, in the tech space, which is those big tech companies, it couldn't be, I suppose, more different.
Yeah.
Leaving a job where you are at the top of your game, and it is, you have been there for so long, and it's so kind of you down to the veins. I can imagine there are lots of people that have said to you, you're crazy. Where are you going? You are British Vogue. This has become so you.
Yeah.
What was the reason for you embarking on a whole new chapter of your life? What was giving you that kind of itch that you needed to scratch?
Well, I think a few things, because there's never just one thing. When you make a really big decision, it's not like you wake up one morning, there's one clear sign of vision from God and you go, I'm doing it.
Today's the day.
There are lots of things that kind of force you out of your comfort zone. And one was, I had, 15 years at Conde Nast. It's like double the 7-year itch plus a year, right? Do you know what I mean?
Very fair.
And I kept having this itch, and they were amazing in terms of extending my role, creating new roles. The chief business officer role hadn't existed before. And it was like, how do we keep this woman in this space? And it was all of these great challenges. And I am just one of those people that needs a new challenge every few years.
I'm with you.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was lucky that there were 10 brands there, and I could go from brand to brand and do different things and so on, relaunch things, recreate things. I really had felt like, firstly, that I had outgrown, the capability to learn a ton new there.
Yeah.
Just because of my path. Secondly, I felt that there was this interesting shift happening in creativity and in fashion that was either a dive headfirst in with kind of fixer mindset, right? Where I just felt like where everything was going in terms of innovation and tech, fashion and creativity weren't meeting it hands-on.
Right.
There was this resistance again. It reminded me, like at the start in media when digital was really, we were all consuming and everyone fought against it a bit and like, let's shut influencers out and let's,
It's like with music when it was like, okay, we're not going to do physical singles anymore.
Yeah.
That's not the focus. It's all downloads.
It's all downloads.
And everyone was like, what? Sorry, what? No.
And people try and push against it rather than go, right, how do we meet this and kind of cut through and create and innovate? And whenever those other moments had happened, I always thought, right, this is so exciting. We can do this, that,
Get
the
stuck
other.
in.
Da, 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 da. I remember when social was really taking over and all of my editors were nervous about influencers and what social would do and how much more time. I was like, right. I remember phoning Ava Chen and like, I'm coming to New York. Can I sit with you? I want to partner with you. She was like, everyone else is like shunning us and thinking we're stealing their lunch. And I didn't have that. I want to meet this moment here, pull.
Right. Okay.
I think for myself as well, there was this huge conversation happening around AI and in the big tech space. And I sort of had this slightly fearful pang and I didn't like it. And I thought, I've never been someone to kind of hide away from something. So I'm going to meet the moment by being one of those spaces, having a front row seat, seeing how everything comes together and learning in the moment rather than consuming sort of the secondhand removed data that is filling us a little bit with fear rather than understanding. So it was a kind of culmination of we'd done this huge job turning around Vogue, this job that we'd been told was pretty much impossible. I'd had another crack. I had this sort of internal pull as well of, can you do it? Do you ever have those things where you're like...
It ends up being a competition with yourself.
Yeah. And it's like, this is scary. And everyone's telling me, not everyone, but a lot of people were like, oh, not sure if you're gonna...
And on paper, it's not necessarily the smartest move.
Yeah.
You know?
On paper, I think people had a much more emotional reaction. People really associated me with being at Vogue in particular and Conde Nast.
I actually remember when you announced that you were leaving and you were excited for your new job role and everyone was like, no, you can't. Like it, the same way actually when Vogue left the building, left Vogue House. So, that was another, people don't like change, do they? And I spoke about this with a girlfriend of mine recently. People get so used to a version of you. And however that is and however successful that version is, it might be that you're, like you say, smashing it where you are. It might be that you're sort of at the middle road, or it might be that you sit below them. Whether they're friends or family, however close they are, they get used to a version of you. And when you change that, that changes, it almost holds the mirror up to them a little bit to say, oh, hang on, if she's now doing... And I think sometimes it comes from that place, doesn't it?
Yeah. The number of people who at first were like, no, my God, what's going to happen? Who then, I had such a big reaction to that announcement. It was, I remember. It panicked me a little bit, to be honest. I was like, oh my God, why does it mean so? I'm just changing jobs. Like, it's a big deal to me.
No, but it's credit to you, and they feel that would be a loss to them, I
had so many people reach out about, hey, listen, I've been thinking about this big change, or that's why I wanted to be here, starting my own thing, making the move. I've had a friend who was 20 years at the same company on the comm side, who's now moved to Google. They were circling her for ages, and she was sort of like, right, if you've done it, I'm going to do it, And so lots of people reached out to me around, I've been thinking about doing this crazy thing as well, and I've held back, and I'm worried about what people would say or if I can do it. And it's like, if you can't, you can't.
Yes.
If you're
but
good,
there's only one way to find out.
There's only one way, and you got to bite the bullet. Yeah.
So you make the jump.
Yes.
You're now the big tech girly.
Yeah.
How does your day-to-day look at Google? What do you do? Look at me, I just for my own, What time's your lunch break so I can call you? How does it look? What do you do? I know before you come here, you had a meeting a morning full of meetings.
Yeah.
What's your day-to-day running?
It's really, really different. And one of the things I'm working on is trying to make sure that I work well within the Google infrastructure. It's much more prescribed.
Right.
But I also bespoke it to bring my skills to so... there are lots and lots of meetings. Meetings tend to be around 25 minutes long, back to back.
Right.
And so lunch is about 25 minutes, which I'm used to, swanning around Mayfair, going to
Annabelle's to meet
so-and-so, and 2.5. So much of the business in my old world was done over a lunch, or informally,
or a coffee, the creative space tends to be a lot more fluid, doesn't it? Pop in, or I
realized how much of my business was done on text. Just literally someone would say, we're thinking of that. Okay, give me a quick call. Are you around? I'm around at the end of the day. Let's go. And then, when I was doing my handover at Conde, I was like, oh my God, there's nothing on my email that's useful.
It's all WhatsApp.
It's all like relationship.
It's a big part of what you do.
It's huge, but what I realize is that's the common thread, especially now. It's the same thing at Google. Is I'm really big into this idea of lifting your gaze. So my days are quite prescribed,
right?
And there's a lot of incredible work that gets done in that. It's a big cross-functional matrix team, right? So you have to connect with people. But I'm also like, how do I get to lift my gaze and just have the informal connections, not the 25 minutes allotted.
Bring
what
in
you're really thinking.
That side of you here. Yeah,
and that's what I've been brought in for.
Yeah.
So I'm really trying to become much stricter on blocking my time, structuring time for conversations like this, because sometimes you learn about yourself as you're speaking to interesting people, or you're even talking about yourself. You're like, I phrased it like that. I hadn't thought about it.
We don't have time to reflect. That's why. When do you get to have those kind of internal conversations?
Those reflection moments, those informal, vulnerable, sharing, off the record moments, that's where most business is done, right?
Agreed.
That's when people tell you. And so a lot of the breakthroughs that I've had at Google, which have been, thank the Lord, it's like working, you know what I mean? Have been with people, with brands where there are people where I have really close relationships that I can say, right, we've had the big meeting with the 30 different stakeholders. Now let's go and have a coffee. Let's go and have a drink and tell me what's really going on. And every single one where there's been a big transformative breakthrough has been through one of those.
Always.
So it's always people first. And so to answer your question, my days look quite different. They're very structured, but increasingly I'm making more time for those heart-to-hearts and that.
What is your job role now?
So I'm managing director of technology, media and telecoms for Google UKI, which basically means managing our partnerships with some of the biggest and most complex brands. And a lot of those are, big global tech brands, which is so interesting, not my background. Big global telecoms brands and so on. Media's in there, which is like, I know this. I'm always like, shoulders down.
Back to Annabelle's we go.
Skipping. Let's frolic into Annabelle's. Claridge's knows us. But, but what is so interesting, and I think one of the biggest things that I've learned and I will take away is ultimately, whenever you put yourself in these very different spaces, people are people. Yeah. They care about being cared about. They care about
that FaceTime.
You know what I mean? All of those things. And the same fears that I saw displayed in the, the recession that I was talking about at the beginning of Conde Nast, or when I turned up at first at Conde and people were like, hang on a minute, this doesn't feel like my last leader. All of that stuff shows up again, and it just has a different packaging.
It's a different face. Yeah, absolutely that. Yeah. One thing that I've noticed when we talk about your career is that you've literally gone from one juggernaut to another. Yeah. Like we're not talking small fry. These are huge juggernauts. The other thing that I've noticed is that your career is full of firsts. So we've got you become the first black female publisher of British GQ, first black female publisher at British Vogue. These are such big and incredible milestones, particularly, I suppose, in an industry that hasn't always been so inclusive. In fact, you could say it was exclusive, at some points. Those kind of first moments, as amazing as they are, it comes with, and we touched on it a little bit earlier, but it comes with not everybody else being ready for that first. Yeah. Great for you, great for everybody else when they get their head around it. But the time that it takes to sort of, like you say, you're at British Vogue for 15 years. Yeah. The time that it takes for everybody to sort of be, okay, here we are. Are you noticing now that you've switched to another company and another firm, you notice that actually every time it's getting a bit easier? I suppose what I'm trying to ask is, the landscape has changed so much. We're now in 2025, just still getting used to saying that. I know. It's so weird. Are you noticing that those changes are a lot more welcome than they were?
The first thing is that's so interesting to me is I've never known before taking the role. Because no one ever, it's really, really important to me that I am not the diversity hire. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
I
of
always
course.
feel like I need to be able to like prove my results. And that's why I quite like being on the business side. It's harder on the creative side. And I'm, so much of my heart is with the creative industries. I like that what I do is very measurable. Because you can prove success, it's more objective.
Results driven.
Yeah, but I've never known that until after. And I've often questioned, if I'd known that, would I have taken the job? Like I remember in 2020, people became braver about saying, will you join our board because we need a black woman? And I'd immediately be like, oh, no, don't think it's right for me. But,
It would happen to me in telly. People would be like, oh, we really want someone to come on and talk about Black Lives Matter. I'm like, do you know what? If you looked at the roles, you'd have somebody there all day, every day to be able to talk about that matter.
Exactly. That to fix
whatever's
going on.
Wheel me in to chat about it and then off I go again.
I don't want to be professionally black, or whatever, or professionally a woman. Like I have a job role. I need to prove I can do that job. Do I think it's getting easier? I mean, I've got a bit of a tough answer on that, which is no, I don't.
You've got plenty of experience in joining forces where where you are different or you are the first. How do you advocate for yourself in a room? I suppose you do that without even realising because you are you. But what would your advice be to somebody listening that is starting a new role and they are kind of not confident? Because we talk about self-work and we talk about how that looks and there's a lot to be done, right? But what would your advice be? Yeah,
this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because there's a little bit of faking it till you make it, right? If you come across as someone who seems unsure and people are already a little bit like, oh, this feels different, then people have that jump off point. I think understanding the room as best you can.
Right.
So who's making up that room? What are they motivated by? What are they excited about? What might they be dubious about, right? And you can see a lot from people's profiles or who they know already. But I think as much as possible, having your stats, whatever that looks like for you, right? And this can be in any walk of life. If you know, I've been doing this for X years, right? Have that stat to hand. See if there's a way you can pepper it in. If you know that you're entering a different sphere, but you had great sales, what does that look? You know what I mean?
Yes.
So have your own personal sort of stump speech, as we call it, and cherry pick the lines from that can help to gain confidence.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is listening, right? So what happens when we're nervous is, particularly in those rooms, despite everything I just said, you want to talk. You want to convince.
So
you want to please hear me, right?
So true.
And a lot of times it's like, just listen, observe. Going back to what I said at the beginning.
Observer.
The way that people interact, you can spot false confidence really fast if you're listening and observing. And the people who are false confidence tend to be the people who are most challenging. People who are truly confident, they're interested in like everyone rising, right?
It's not performative.
They're like, okay, this person's interesting. What can I learn? How can I grow? So I think particularly in those early interactions, you might have some key points you want to hit. Make sure you hit them. Make sure you don't fumble the moment and all of those things, but then really spend some time listening and watching. Who reaches out to who they think is the power source? Who is the power source? Because often the most influential person in a conversation or in a room is not the person with the biggest title. So I always look at like, who are the cultural influences in any dynamic, right? And how do I get to them? So they might be the person that the boss listens to the most.
Yes.
And does getting to them mean being their friend more or challenging them more, right? All of these things are questions that you need to amount. But
which sometimes does go hand in hand, right?
Yeah. So the thing is, it's like, try to take the onus purely off yourself and how you perform, and put it more on, okay, what's the dynamic and who are these people?
When did you yourself realise the importance of creating opportunities for other people when they might not ordinarily have a seat at the table?
I have been so lucky to have worked with incredible people who may not have had the shot, got the shot, and did amazing things with it. And I think it's almost a component part of their success. And I felt it. I felt that I've had these, I'm really loath to say these lucky moments, but where there's been opportunity and someone's taken a chance on me or someone's seen something in me, I really run with it. And I think that that's a common thread with people who don't have an abundance of opportunity, right? And so I've really tried to pay that forward. And particularly when my first publisher role at Conde Nast, I had created this job for myself, right? So there was no team because the role didn't exist.
I love that for you. I
was like, oh my God, everybody wants to be the publisher of Vogue, GQ, or Vanity Fair. I'm way out in a different orbit. But there's this tiny little publication called GQ Style. No one cares about it, doesn't have a dedicated editor really, doesn't have a team. I'm going to ask if they would have me run that because I can see how I can build that into something out of nothing, right? So I made this pitch. They said, yeah, all right, you don't get any more team. What you can do is help us with the editorial team, build that out, I was like, fine. So I needed an assistant, but there was no headcount for an assistant. So thinking, how do I fix this? Can I work with someone else? And I said, look, what we can do, because you don't want to give a headcount, is just let me have an intern. But I would like to choose that intern from a pool that doesn't exist because they're going to be doing something really different. And I used that opportunity as a way of hiring people into Conde Nast who didn't have the ski holidays, who didn't have the, right, who just wouldn't otherwise. They were not part of the 1 degree of separation. They didn't know anyone else, usually in the company. And I found this, I was working with the London College of Fashion. I was on the board, I think, at that time at the universities there. And we got in all of these people who came in for 6-month stints. They had 6 months to come into an organisation. They thought, I would never stand in the offices of Vogue House. I would never be in the same room that Isabella Blow once was in or Kate Moss was streamed in. And those people worked their socks off. You never seen people work harder. They couldn't believe their luck. They worked late. They started early. They were paid. It was also a big thing for me to make sure that everyone was paid.
Because that's the other thing, right?
Because at that time, interns were not paid.
Oh, and everybody wants it on their CV, so they're going to work.
So what you had was a proliferation of people who had the money to live in Mayfair, not pay for transport and all of those things. So over the course of the years, even when I got an assistant, I kept that going because it had a proof, right? I'd proven the case, which is, look how much that one person has done. And over the course of time, I saw this incredible hit rate with those interns. This one went on to Chanel. This one went on to get this editorial job. She's launched her own magazine. She's doing this. And so I've got this army of people who started as my interns. One of them I was with yesterday, Sunday tea with our kids. And this is nuts, And for me, just understanding where the seeds that you water, the way that they grow, that then, feeds you. The fruit of that comes back to you.
You can see it when you talk about it, how much that lights you up.
I love it. I love to back people who have that fire. Like at Conde Nast, I saw things shifting as you bring in people who go, I know someone who can do that. I know a photographer friend who's from that background. I know it changes the kind of the fabric of the organization. If we were backing the founders and the businesses that we cared about, we could change the world, right?
You're so right.
And so that's something I really feel is so passionate about.
You articulate it so well. Honestly, you can see how much that means to you, and it is so important and so rewarding as well for self. You know, that is, you do that all day long if you could.
Yeah.
What do you think? Because publishing is an industry that's, you know, based on tradition. Like it feels very kind of traditional in the way that it's run. But I know that you are so big on innovation, which is again, your face lights up, which is what I love. What do you think? I suppose, or the vital keys in staying relevant in such a thriving, sort of rapidly evolving space?
Yeah, I think it's about trying things and asking questions. So if you think about the kind of AI space or any tech innovation, most of the people who feel most strongly about it to the negative are people who haven't really spent a lot of time trying it, right?
I'm probably one of those people.
Right? You know, so the fear is bigger. And if you're going to have fear, have it be rooted in experience. So I do think it's important to read, but I think it's really important to try things and be around people who know about it. So you can ask questions to source.
Yeah.
I remember the summer of... you know, when ChatGPT exploded, frankly, right? And everyone suddenly thought, oh my God, AI's here, not realizing like AI had been here for, you know, decade and a half before that. I'm really lucky to have a great friend, Whitney, who was the founder of Bumble. And she was talking lots about it, and we were messaging, and we were going to have dinner. And she said, I'm coming out of this tech conference absolutely blowing my mind. And I'd had this question about moving to Google. I'd confided in a couple of friends. And she said, right, come and stay at mine. Let's pull it up. Let's play with it. Let me tell you what I think's happening here. And it was just, I couldn't have had that conversation with her if I hadn't already been playing, if I hadn't been having some of the conversations with Google. And so I wouldn't have had my mind expanded on the possibilities and pitfalls. So my main piece of advice is, try some of the things you're scared of. Try not one version of it, right? So try Gemini, which is Google's version, which I do think is superior, and see if there are uses that can help your life, and see if some of the things that you think are being discussed about that are scary are really scary.
Right.
Most of all, if the train has left the station, as I feel it has, I know it has, then the big thing is like, really think about what is the opportunity for you, as well as think about the threats, right?
Yeah.
And human nature is such that whenever anything changes, we do tend to think about the challenges first, and that's no bad thing. It's part of our evolution, right? To look for danger.
But it's very British.
Right, it's very British as well.
I'm not going to do that just in case this happens.
But like, and we should interrogate things. We should say, what does this mean for this group or that group? We should also say, what does it mean for me? Who else is using it? How do I stack up to them? Can I still compete? Is this my moment to change or shift or be in a different space? So that's my number one tip, is engage in the use.
Yes.
And particularly for AI, that is really, really important, because who uses it shapes it.
Right.
So if there are certain sections of society who aren't engaging with AI, then AI doesn't learn that you exist and you operate in a certain way and you use certain languages and you care about certain things.
So you're sort of keeping yourself out of the conversation.
Yeah.
What I think is so interesting is that there's a lot of, and you know, that's a question for you, is I suppose the fear of AI misplaced, but there's this real feeling of, you know, this is terrible, we're going to lose our jobs to this robot, or we're going to, you know, but actually I suppose, is there an element of actually you would lose your job to somebody who knows how to use it?
It's the number one thing that we sort of talk about in our teams, is that you are far more likely to lose your job to someone with the same job title using AI better than you, right? Than you are to lose it to AI.
Right.
So the big thing right now is look around. How is it being utilized? How can you start with efficiency, right? So how can you be more efficient in your job and using AI? that use case will help you start to form opinions about everything from new business ideas to actually this is where the line should stop for me, and this is how I'm going to reset my privacy or whatever it is. But you have to be in it to be the surefire way of losing out to AI is not engaging with it.
Right.
It's not ignoring it. There's no path to success that way, because you can't form an opinion. You can't even be really well grounded on what your fears are. Do you know what I mean?
If you've got no idea on how
not
it looks.
in it. Yeah.
Note to self, Rochelle Humes. Note to self.
Get your diary in order. Use Notebook LM to, my favorite thing is Notebook LM, because I'm such a multi-sensory person. I'm either visual or sound or what have you. And what I love about something like Notebook LM is that it can create a conversation of a document you don't want to read. So if there's something like a heavy, report.
Yes, the ones that I'm always like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or, a bit of text that you're like, I need to know this, but it's not. Then it can turn that into a conversation. You could just listen to it like a podcast. Oh. And that's transformative for how fast and how deep you can consume data that you otherwise would struggle with, right?
Yeah.
That's the difference between you outsourcing something to someone else and hoping that they give you the right bits of information.
That would change my life.
So think about things like our financial literacy, going back to, let's say, women in particular. A lot of times we rely on a third party to tell us, like, this is the best course of action for you.
That's me.
Now you can have a more objective, view. You can consume it before you ask. The questions you can ask that expert will change exponentially if you can do more of the reading up, right?
Yeah.
And if the reading up is the hard part and you can have it conversationally, that's amazing, right? So just think about those sorts of innovations.
Genuinely, that would change my life.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, things that I'm like, okay, I need to go through that sales report and I need to go, and it's the biggest doc you've ever seen.
Yeah.
But if I could just listen to it on my way into the office, in the car.
You can ask it questions. So if really what you're trying to get to is which of our products, on My Coco is showing the fastest growth, right? Or which has the biggest growth potential, it can pull out for you based on X page so-and-so, based on the data, this is what we see. Now, I would recommend that you then go in and actually read it and make sure it's interpreting. But what it does is if you've got a document that's, 200 pages, it can say, well, these are the 3 pages that you should look at, right, to answer that question. So again, it means that you're more informed and less reliant on being externally guided.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. It's blown my mind. I'm like, after this, I'm going to just ask you what I need to download.
Notebook
where I find it. I want to go back a little bit to you opening doors for others. You do it so incredibly well. But I'm so curious to know who opened the door for you in a way that you are forever grateful for.
Oh, wow. That's such a huge compliment, because basically the reason that we know each other and the reason that I was like always on any Vogue guest list or any dinner or any little thing, I'd be like, get Rochelle in, because nice. I love girls or women's women, right? I do that for people who I feel will pay it forward.
I'm with you.
And so it's easy to do that when you're like, that person is not going to hold that baton forever. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so you can only do that with those people around. So who has done that for me? An absolute myriad of women have done that for me, and men, I should say. But sometimes what I think is really powerful, because people are always like, who got you there? And who did... Mm-hmm. I've rarely had where someone said, you should do this. And like, but I think what I have had is a lot of people who gas me up in the right way, but also keep me grounded.
Yes.
So I'm really lucky to have the same group of friends that I went to primary school with, and they'll be the first to take the piss out of me if they're, you know what I mean?
It's the ground. You need that. You can't be,
important.
the OBEs. You need a little bit of real.
You have to say, people go, oh my God, what were you wearing, love? That did not work out. Or like, what did you say? Because when those people say you should go for that, you feel it in your whole heart and spirit. You know that those are not yes people. They care about you. They would tell you if it was wrong for you. So I think that I've been really lucky to have a series of people in my life who are the ones who say, hey, listen, you should try that. You should do this. I'm really lucky. There's an incredible woman called June Sarpong, for example.
She is just...
I love her because she's always like, have you thought about, you know what, you should meet and da-da-da-da-da. And she really expands my thinking about what is the possible and like, who am I socializing with and who am I getting ideas from? But it's not always the direct link. It's the people that make you feel like the impossible are possible.
Yeah.
Even just by observing them. Just some people, like, being in their orbit makes you feel like lots is possible. You are 100% one of those people.
Oh.
Like, I'm definitely not gassing you in that. I think that you're always, like, I remember when we were first speaking about your brand and you were talking about just like boots or whatever, you know what I mean? It's like, it feels intimidating and blah, 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 and I'm going to go and do it, you know, or that for me is like, gosh, what am I doing? You know? And I just love being around people who push themselves, whatever that may be. That may be, you know, my friend who's, you know, a beautician, like, I want to become a fully fledged makeup artist and I don't know what I'm doing and I'm going to go and do this course. Or it might be a friend of mine who's a CEO who's like, I think I want to build a portfolio career and I think people are going to think I've fallen off, but I want to do this but I'm going to do it anyway. I think, you know, who you are around day to day, how they speak, how they energize themselves is sometimes more encouraging than someone saying, hey, let me introduce you to this person.
You're so right. I mean? Just giving you that kind of, it's not even a safety net or a support system sometimes. It's just giving you that fuel to power. And like you say, it can be in the simplest way. I have it with my best friend who is so sort of far removed from this industry. But if something's on her radar, I know that it's popped. Yeah. You know, and my mum's a good gauge of that too. I'm like, my mum knew about this. That must mean this person is doing this really well. Yeah. And I think there's no greater reward with connecting like-minded people together. Someone that you know that would be incredibly instrumental to somebody. That moment that you put them together, there's no greater feeling to me.
I absolutely vibe off that. I love it.
It's the best.
It's like matchmaking.
Yes.
It's like, you know, have you ever set a couple up and then you're like, feel like a proud mum when they're
just all great until it goes wrong.
I know.
I'm so sorry. Now you're like, whose side am I on? I'm not really sure. I want to talk about your book.
Yes.
Because I know this is something that you've been working on for a very long time, probably since you were that little 7-year-old girl without even realizing. What was the moment that you thought, do you know what, I've got a story to tell here? I mean, I know that about you, but it takes something for that to sort of dawn on yourself, you know?
You know, I feel it's the one area I feel most nervous and excited about talking about, because it's still a way off. The book process has actually been so eye-opening for me. You kind of write this thing and then you need to rewrite it a million and one times, and then it needs to go through this long process of being checked and so on. But the book is not about me. So what happened was lots and lots of people approached me in the Vogue era about you know what you said at the top, we want to know about the people behind the scenes and how it comes together, and I thought, I'm going to be brutally honest, I'm not sure I would read a book at this point about me. But what I do think is really interesting are some of the people I've been exposed to and the commonality in some of these powerhouses who have become successful, perhaps in spite of, or maybe because of, difference, right? And that's everyone from people at the top of creative fields, people in the public eye, people who are running companies, people who are leading in innovation. I just realized that I was at this amazing intersection where, you know, we have those dinners and it just feels really normal, and you're like, gosh, I've got so-and-so sat next to me and this person's there, and it just kind of gets to be like, oh, this is just Wednesday night. But it's like, it's really amazing that this person is someone that you can WhatsApp and ask about something. And I thought a lot of, to the point previously about a lot of what buoys me on is this collection of people that I happen to have around me who feel that the impossible is possible.
Yeah.
And I realized that that was a huge and incredible advantage that not many people have. And I wanted to really bring that to the world, which is, these are some of the key things that great minds think. And particularly, this is how they've used any axes of difference to shape the world differently. And so this is what superpowers look like, right?
I love
that. Yeah, the book is more about that, but we're still a little way off before it's out, which is kind of like, I feel like I'm back to my magazine days.
Yeah, it takes, but do you know what? You can't rush perfection.
Yeah, well,
you know, when it comes to this, it's so nice to live with it, and I'm sure you're still meeting lots of incredible people.
Yeah.
So it will always take
and
time.
lots of times I'm like, you should be in this. And so I
and
think
then the editor's like,
I know,
need this.
stop.
Stop meeting. Stop those dinners, Vanessa. It's counterproductive.
But I think what I'm really looking forward to is the conversations that kind of come out of that.
Yeah.
Which is what I hope is that people look upon the thing that they might find most challenging in their lives as actually a strength rather than a weakness. So that might be background, that might be your access to certain things, that might be whatever it is. A lot of times the people I know who are ultra successful, those challenging things are actually the things they look upon as like, this is my setting me.
Yeah. It sounds like to me that you have nailed it at everything. I'm going to be honest. You know, you're that person that I'm like, she's great at this, she's great at that. I know that to self, it always feels very different, but from the outside, that's what I observe. Is there something that you would like to be better at?
So many things I'd like to be better at. Look, I think the truth is in life, if you're doing things that you think you're good at, the majority of times, I don't know if you're really living, right? So actually, you know, what I'm doing right now at Google is really hard. You know, I'm really lucky. We closed 2024. The stats
We made it.
Yeah, we made it, but we really excelled. Like, my team have absolutely killed it.
Wow.
And we're in fast growth. We're growing ahead of, you know, all the things that I was supposed to do, we've done. Somehow it still feels like, okay, you know, but I love that feeling. And whenever I stop having that feeling, I think I need to one up or be in somewhere different. So the truth is, like, almost everything, you know what I mean? It's that thing that you know, you can have it all, but not all at once as well. So I often am like, gosh, how could I be a better mother while I'm juggling? You know, I've got a 5-year-old son, and this job is big and it takes a lot of my attention. And so I had a planning meeting with my team at the start of the year of like, I need to carve out spaces that are dedicated to my son. I need to be asking myself a set of questions. I need to be, right? So I'm always trying to think about how I can be better at that. Am I challenging too much or not enough in my new space? You know, how can I get better at that? How can I create better understanding? How can I waste space, not waste time in spaces I'm trying to create understanding that aren't important?
Yeah.
So I think life is about this kind of constant refinement and constant getting better. And when you feel you're really good, that's when it's time to move on.
Yes, and when you lose that, that feel, we all know that feeling.
Yeah.
That something magical happens when you have that moment.
That feeling.
I mean, sometimes too much.
Yeah.
Sometimes
we don't want to be on the struggle bus.
It's giving tight chest. Not quite there.
Can I
but
breathe?
that thing that keeps you on your toes
Yeah.
is the thing that does keep you ticking.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, my mother works with the elderly now, and she absolutely loves it. My mum's career is defined by 40 years of being an amazing award-winning midwife and teacher in that space. Wow. She likes babies and old people. And she's always like...
caring.
Caring. Yeah. But also, young babies and the elderly remove a lot of the noise that we have in the middle of our lives. They are very much around the basics. What keeps you alive? what drives you, what makes you happy, and all of those things. And one of the things that I've really learned, particularly on this part of her career, is you have to be expanding your neural pathways all the time. Otherwise you degrade, right? So if you are too much in your comfort zone all of the time, you're actually, you're aging, right?
No one wants to age.
I know. So although I would love much more time under my infrared lamp and in pure self-care, I look at challenging myself, putting in situations where I might fail, right? And I have to expand my thinking. I'm forced as kind of being the ultimate anti-aging, right?
It's constant growth, isn't it? It's constant growth. Right, we're going to do the rocket round now.
Okay.
These are quick fire, which is hard for us,
I'm
girl.
so bad at quick fire.
I know, me
Bear
too.
with me.
But do you know what? We're quite flex here. I don't think we've had one good guest at quick fire.
So bad
Get
at
two girlies together, that's what happens. Right, the first one is, what are the non-negotiables for launching? And that could be a business or getting into that new job role.
You have to have at least a 95% unwavering belief that it's the right thing, right? Ooh. I think 90%, I would say at least, right? Then the other little bit, whether it be 5% or 10%, questioning is really important for that jitter, right? You need that to get out of the bed. You need that to keep you questioning, is this the right thing? Am I doing it the right way? Do I have the right people? But you have to really believe in yourself and the opportunity in order to show up and answer all the questions from the doubters. But you also need that counterbalance of a little bit of scary, a little bit of doubt to keep yourself in check.
Okay, love that. When did you first realise that you truly launched?
Oh, any day now, Michelle. Listen, life is humbling. And I think that I never really think of myself as successful. Wow. I'm scared to do it because I think I'm the product of social mobility, right? And most upwardly social mobile people understand that everything's relative.
Yeah.
And so I sit in this amazing place where I have friends who have such unbelievable success. You are humbled by that. You're like, oh God, I'm nothing. They're running. They created this. They launched it. They're living the dream. I have other people whose success is so inspirational because they've only moved a few stages up, but the chance of them doing that is huge. So I never feel like the job's done. I think there's always more.
I like that. And is that like fear of being complacent?
Yes,
right.
That's exactly it. That is a much nicer way of saying it, is that I think I don't feel that I have the right to be complacent. I think that I've known incredible human beings who, given some of the opportunities that I've managed to accumulate, would have done incredible things. And I somehow feel like I almost owe it to them as well as myself to not get too comfy. Okay. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I like that. What do people usually seek your advice or help for?
So many things. And I love it, to be honest. If I've got capacity, I'll really lean in. At the moment, a lot of people are talking to me about career change. A huge amount of people are saying, I'm thinking about doing it differently. I'm thinking about this. And a lot of that excites me. Some of it scares me a little bit because I see a lot of senior female execs wanting to drop out.
Right.
And I think some of that has to do with perimenopause. Some of that has to do with the confluence of being caregivers at home, and when that becomes challenging, teenagey type years with when, and I think we can't lose a lot of the great thinkers who've accumulated a lot of the skills, those female leaders out of the career space. And some of it's really exciting where people are like, I just will be much more fulfilling to be in this. Like, I was thinking of this, what do you think? A lot of people talk to me about balancing, Everyone thinks everyone else has got this secret formula to
Everybody
balance.
does. And people, that's something that people ask me about.
Yeah.
You've got 3 kids, how do you... And I'm like, whoa.
I was going to ask you.
yeah. Don't. I've got
I
no
know.
answer. I'm searching myself.
I know. We're all, you know, and
You can't be great at everything all the time. And that's what it is. And I genuinely believe that when I'm being a great mum, something's suffering at work. When everything is incredible at work and we're where we should be and we're hitting this target, I might not have made it back for gym class that night. You know, so I think it is just... Emma Greed articulates this perfectly. It's a series of trade-offs.
We love Emma.
It is. We love her. And it is a series of trade-offs. And you kind of get better at being comfortable with that.
You know, the last couple of dinners that the 3 of us happened to be at, now you mentioned Emma, I was thinking about this because I think we've all touched on it. And I think that even when I feel I'm not being a great parent, right? I know that I'm teaching my son something really valuable.
There you go.
Because a lot of my drive comes from seeing my mum get up every day, put on her glad rags, put on her lipstick, no matter what was going on, she stepped out looking impeccable to go and do really hard things. And I never thought ill of her for doing that, right? Because the time that she gave me back was about quality. So it wasn't necessarily about the quantity.
Yeah.
But somehow we're constantly beating ourselves up about this like quantity thing, right? So really think about, gosh, our kids are so lucky. Not only do they get, no one saw my mum doing that stuff. It was only me. Do you know what I mean? And my sister.
Yeah.
And now I think this whole generation of people get to see that you can do what you do and still have 3 kids and be honest about the fact it's not perfect. And I think it's going to be great for those guys coming up and what they look at success as being, but it's also giving so much relief to so many women who are beating themselves up about, you know, all of this. So yeah, it's good for me. I feel grounded when we're together and when I can see you and when we talk honestly. But I think it's really important for our kids. I think.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. What brand do you wish that you had founded?
Oh,
I love this one.
Google.
There you go.
No, I think, I don't know that there's a specific brand per se. I think that one of the things that I've really realized is I am a really good facilitator of creators. Do you know what I mean? I see what their talents are that they might not see.
Right.
They think it's this.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's a good thing, but it's actually this. And I can often see what their gaps are that they don't see. I don't think, I'm kind of quite good at putting those chess pieces together. I'm good at betting on things, but I'm yet to come across a brand and think, you know, I
wish I did that.
Well, I could have done it different or better. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, got you. If you could choose one female figure as a mentor, past or present, who would it be? I'm sure lots of your guests will say this, but the female figures that are most important to me are the people I've seen up close and personal. So my grandmother, you know, is still my daily guiding voice. You know what I mean? And she's been passed for a long time. I lived with her. I think we can look at people from afar and you must have this all the time. The person that people think I am day to day is sometimes glossier and more perfect than, you know. Because we've not got time to say, well, actually, this is what happened. To, you know, it's everything seems from the other side, doesn't it? It all seems so sparkly.
And so the people where you get to see the messy middle, how do they navigate that stuff?
Yes.
What are their day-to-day habits? Those are the people that their voices live in my head. So I am constantly thinking about, you know, this woman who would never, she came to England once in her 60s, you know, the world I operate in now would be so foreign to her. But there are certain things that she did in times of challenge, certain things that she did daily that really guide me, a lot to do with, you know, starting your day with giving thanks and gratitude, a lot of things that I think we call vision boarding or whatever now.
It's all got a title now, isn't it?
Yeah,
Manifesting.
she would pray
Yeah.
out loud. But it was just, you know, I think that was her kind of visualizing for like, this is what I want to, how to shape things and just how she managed conflict and hardship. I think, yeah, my answer to that is probably more than one person and people that I get to lucky enough to be close to. Yeah.
And if you could trade one of your current skills for a superpower that would help you in business, what would it be and why?
You know what? I was going to say being able to see the future. I'm not sure that I want that actually, although I think lots of people would say that. I think, what is the superpower and the skill? To see people's fears more clearly.
Oh, that's good.
I think much more of the world operates on fear than it does on opportunity or love or ability. And I think if we could get past, think about a lot of the really horrible, hard stuff that's happening in the world. A lot of it is to do with fear. It's to do with fear of scarcity, resources. It's to fear of loss of power. It's to do with fear of the other, right? All of those things. When you boil it down into business, that's all happening.
Yeah.
Right? It's just, you know, on a more localized scale. And I think a lot of the times when we're looking for opportunity and we're trying to sift out which are the best opportunities, understanding what's rooted in fear is really helpful for sifting out, like, you know,
everything else.
Do you know
all the
what I
nonsense
mean?
in between.
Yeah,
Yes, that makes sense. Now it's time to leave.
Notice I didn't trade anything off.
Yeah, I saw. I knew. I saw. I was like, she's not giving up anything, and I love that. She's like, girl, I'm not giving you anything. I just want a bit of this.
I worked for this, babe.
Love that. This has been a journey. Not giving you anything. Right, now it's time to leave a tip.
Yes.
And I'd like to know what one piece of advice is that you would give a lady looking to launch. So we're hoping people are watching in their lunch break. And what would, if you could speak, what you're going to now, speak directly to another woman, what's one bit of important advice that you think that she should know?
Sitting up straight for this.
Oh, she really is.
Yeah.
She's taking this one seriously.
Because I think it's so important. It's hard to boil it down to one. But I think if I were to choose one, it's how we speak to ourselves and about ourselves. And I think that I am quite a self-critical person. And it's handy, right, to be analytical, but how you speak to yourself about your success, your failures, your opportunities is what you give power to. And as an extension of that, choose people who speak kindly to you. That kindly doesn't mean telling you yes all the time. Speaking kindly to yourself doesn't mean saying you nailed it when you didn't. But things like, I messed that up, or that was stupid, or what of those things, those become fragments of who you are.
Yeah.
Right? So saying, you know what, I learned something there. That's super valuable.
We won't do that again.
Yeah, I'm going to play that differently. That's an action point. I'm going to reach out to so-and-so to be better at that. Just being kind to yourself. And, you know, you often hear this advice of speak to yourself the way you'd speak to a friend, the way you'd speak to your child, the way, right? But I think that there isn't a ton of emphasis on this. And I think it is the number one pivotal thing that changed my mindset. So when I was really young, I was super tall, right? And I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I was head and shoulders above everyone else. I was always the kid that was caught chatting in assembly because you could see me, right? My shoulders stuck. And I would always say, God, I hate being so tall. I hate that, you know what I mean? I have to hunch over, I have to make myself small. And deciding that I hated being tall meant that I was telling myself all of these things that I had to be to not be that. And then I had this shift of perspective, right? I got scouted for modeling. It was a great opportunity. I did it for a bit. I wasn't an amazing model. I had too many opinions, but the blank canvas, I was not. I was literally like,
we need you to wear this look. No, actually.
Trying to see the pictures and all of those things. But it was suddenly this kind of wake-up call of this thing that you have thought is your challenge in life, and you've talked to yourself so unkindly about, someone else sees as a commodity. And you play netball and you play basketball for the, whatever, for London, and you play, and you're modelling because of this thing that you've told yourself for ages, if only I could be average height, if only, who wants to be average? So suddenly I put my shoulders back, and that's why I sat up, and suddenly I saw the world differently. And when you speak differently about something, everyone sees it differently too. So the opportunity is behind how you talk to yourself, right? Forget how everyone else speaks to you. First and foremost, you.
Yeah,
That
is so brilliant.
Power.
So brilliant. Right, lastly.
This was not quick fire, by the way.
That was, no, that's fine. You're
That's
good.
me.
No, the lever tip, you're fine. You've got time with that one. We've done the quick fire. I would like to know how you spend your lunch hour. Because we talk ladies who launch. We want to talk ladies who lunch. You sort of gave us a little insight at the start, because now your days are quite kind of back to back and quite sort of regimented. But what do you do for lunch? Where are you? What are you eating?
Yeah.
Are you working over your lunch? How does it look?
Most lunch times I work over lunch right now. I'm in this sort of new phase, and every moment counts. And also, I'm a mum. I want to try and get home at the end.
A little quicker.
Yeah. At the end of the days where I can. And so at the moment, I try to eat in the restaurants at Google, because that's where you see everyone beyond your team, and you have kind of incidental conversations, people bump into you and that kind of thing. If I'm not doing that, I love to try to connect with people where there is no agenda.
Nice.
Because most of my day is so agendered. When you have those fast fire meetings, you have to have pretty tight, like,
quite transactional,
what's the conversation about? And increasingly, because so at Google, there's a thing called the Google Stone.
Right, tell me. What's the Google Stone?
The Google Stone is that Google are very, very generous, and we can have all of our meals and snacks and coffees and everything inside Google, and the gym is inside Google.
Stop.
And it's amazing. It's absolutely incredible. Everywhere you turn, there are things called micro kitchens that are filled with every kind of snack you want, and they're baristas and da-da-da-da. And so there's a thing that happens in the first year, which is most people put on a stone. And you're also not walking anywhere. Yes. And so now I try to make sure that at least once a week, I go to a different restaurant I haven't tried yet.
Right.
And lots of my friends are in, food PR, and I think I'm not you. Where should I go?
Yes.
And I try to meet with someone where there isn't an agenda, eat new food, and just make sure that I'm kind of not becoming too insular.
Yes.
And, I just think, like, I live in London. It's incredible. I should not be eating the same food every day.
I should see more of it. Yeah.
I should not just be having, like, I tend to just have, like, a salad or greens and a protein and blah, 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 done on to the next. And so at least once a week, I try to break out of that, and someone will have reached out about an investment idea or something that is outside of my day-to-day conversations. And it's amazing what being in a different space does to your thinking. Speaking to someone who you don't speak to on a daily basis does to your thinking. And also, because we're all sort of multi-sensory beings, you think differently when you eat something different. I know it sounds really strange.
Yeah, I get that.
But you know what I mean?
Yes,
yeah.
You're right. Like, your work order would become a salad and this and that.
Yeah.
And you have your kind of go-to because it's easy.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to make a decision about something.
It's done.
Yes.
Boom. Yeah.
But if you're in a different setting,
Yes.
perhaps eating something a bit different.
Your mind is just in somewhere else. So it kind of leads to different decision making and thinking. So yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to order a different lunch today, guys. All right, again. Thank you so much.
Oh, this is so fun. I've
loved this. Loved every moment of this. I actually now know what you do and what you get up to at work. Bad friend.
You are like in the tiny minority of my friends who, like, no one cares when it's, do you know what I mean? When it's Friday night and everybody wants to gossip, ultimately.
Give us a margarita.
Yeah.
It'll be good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my darling. Love being here. Thanks.
Don't forget to follow us on Apple and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts to make sure you don't miss out, because next week we're going to be talking to another incredible lady who launched. Or if, like me, you're a watcher, please follow us on YouTube and don't forget to like and subscribe.